will never look at a swimming pool the same way ever again. Um, how did you come up with the story? Because I read something about aquaphobia. Was it about you confronting your fears?
Yeah, totally. It's, I think that a lot of kids had that childhood fear of, for me, it was seeing Jaws and then being in a pool and then knowing like, I'm not in the ocean, there's no sharks here. But when the lights start flickering, the lights go dark and you can't see the bottom anymore, that suddenly your brain starts playing tricks and you feel like, well, maybe Jaws is there. Maybe I'm not alone in the water. Maybe there's something down there beneath me. So that fear of the unknown, the way that, that idea of thalassophobia, right? Which is like the fear of like the fall off in the water, the deep water. And like, if you can see 10 feet in front of you, but then there's that place where 10 feet turns to 11 feet and like it just kind of disappears and you're like, what's there? What's in that zone? Because that's where I get scared. So I think it was totally me kind of like, Alfred Hitchcock talks about like channeling his own phobias and fears. And for me, it was kind of definitely channeling my fear as a child of the water and trying to see if that still translated as an adult and if you could make the swimming pool scary. And hopefully we succeeded in doing that.
Well, definitely. You just described my fear as well. That's why I never go into the sea where my feet don't touch the ground.
Smart, very smart.
So, yeah. And can I just ask you, one of the most scary scenes is definitely the Marco Polo scene.
My
I
favorite
mean,
scene.
another one of those very kids games
Yeah,
make it scary. Where did it
that's
come
right.
from?
Man, I remember the day I was writing and that idea kind of came to me. And it really started with like just looking at the pool and being like, what things in the pool do we all remember? Like reaching into the drain flap and pulling out the disgusting hair that's gathered up there. Or maybe like finding the dead frog or the dead animal that's there. And it's like, I remember it being a kid, it's like, that's so freaky. Or, being afraid of getting caught like in the main drain, like getting your hair caught and getting held down underwater. But just think about all the things that we remember from the pool. I mean, playing Marco Polo, you're vulnerable. Your eyes are shut. You're drifting out into this unknown space, right? And you don't know what's in front of you and you don't know whose voice that is. And I remember just being like, boom, light bulb went off and it just freaked me out. Like I could hear that. I'm like, what if that voice was not the voice of the person that you were playing the game with? And that thought just kind of, I could not stop thinking about it. And I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite set pieces in the movie. And even if you've seen the trailer, you have not seen the beginning of where that scene goes. We have just barely teased the tip of the iceberg of where that scene goes to. So I'm really, really excited for people to experience that on a big screen, hopefully, and live that Marco Polo nightmare.
Yeah, it's one of the sorry, my cat is killing stuff over here. One of the best suspense scenes, definitely. I always enjoy suspense a bit more than jump scares because
Yeah.
it makes more scary.
Yeah, well,
Um,
there's a long build. I mean, I remember talking with James Wan about that scene. It's always something really fun of like, it's the build up, the build up, the build up, the build up, the build up. And then you go to this point where you think like, oh, that's the end of the scene. Like without giving away, something happens. And then I was like, but wait, like, what if the scene just kept going? And there's like another, you think this is the top of the mountain, but there's actually like another more frightening place that can go to. And just the structure of that, I love in movies and James Wan is a master of doing that. He never lets it alone here. He has to take it to the next level. And I think that was definitely an inspiration of just watching his movies and getting to collaborate with him on that scene.
yeah, speaking of scary moments in The
Yep.
Conjuring. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and
Exactly. Hide and clap. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Another one of those kids games used.
Hmm.
And what was the biggest challenge? Because I can imagine it might look like something very easy, but you had to find the family that the audience connects with. And I think you really
Yeah.
succeeded with Wyatt, Carey, Gavin, and Amélie. I hope I pronounce it right.
Yeah.
But what was one of the biggest challenges on Night Swim?
Well, you're right. I mean, people always kind of assume that working in water was the biggest challenge, but to be totally honest, I think that casting the family and finding that perfect house were actually even harder in some ways because we had the best water crew in the world, the best safety people, the best divers, the best stunt coordinator, and great swimmers in the cast. So that was kind of like, it was challenging and it takes time, but we were like prepared for it. Finding that hero pool was a Herculean challenge. I mean, we were gonna build the pool on the back lot of a studio, but then it was raining so much that the construction site kept getting flooded and it was impossible. And then we just started scouring house after house after house, hundreds of houses until I walked into the back window where Eve was often looking out at the pool. I walked into that view and I saw that pool. And I was just like, I literally was like, clutched my pearls and sat down on the bed because I was like, that's it. That's Night Swim. That's the vantage point I've been seeing in my mind for 5 years. And then now I'm seeing it in real life. And it was almost like made me like emotional with just like, that's it. And so I think when we found that house and it was all practical, it's a real pool that's been around for 70 plus years, probably has its own secrets and its own history. And it had so much character to it, and it was so big, and had the oak trees kind of, gaping over it like this open mouth at the deep end. That was so important, finding that, and I feel like that changed everything when that clicked into place.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a character in its own right.
It totally is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And can I ask you, what do you find interesting about the horror genre as a director?
I love, especially right now in horror, because we're in a moment where there's not really a stigma around it, where like you can get an Oscar nominee Carrie Condon and Wyatt Russell to be in this movie and to be excited about being in this movie, and you can tell a character-driven story like this family that's trying to reshape their new identity after this kind of health crisis. And you can also give these visually experimental images that like, where we go and where we take the pool. Like I've never seen that in any movie before. And I was so exciting for me to get to like bring that to the screen and bring that to life. I think that you're encouraged to be bold and to be even visually bold, visually experimental, as long as it's scary and you're giving the audience what they want, you're telling that story. Like you can do stuff that you can't really do in any other genre. And I just love the moment we're in, where there's this blending of kind of like art house horror and mainstream horror, and they're all kind of one thing. It doesn't matter, and there's an audience for all of it. Movie like Talk to Me, finding an audience, and Smile, and all these things. I just think it's the best time to be making horror in the history of cinema, and I feel so lucky to be making this movie with James Wan and Jason Blum and Universal Studios, which is that's the best of the best. So yeah, I'm excited for people to see it.
Yeah, I can definitely agree on that. I love the times that we're in right now when it comes to horror. It's not like a hate or love it genre anymore. It's right. There's so much more, but it always has been. I mean, horror speaks to one of the biggest human emotions, like fear that we know. So it becomes so meta in a way as well.
And it's about, I mean, almost every horror movie has some kind of underlying theme of the value of life. We don't often experience the value of life until we're confronted with the imminence of death, right? And horror forces us to basically acknowledge our impermanence as humans in our little tiny slice of mortality on this beautiful planet. And it's like, hopefully you kind of walk away being like, I want to like love harder, live better, be kinder, because like death is all around us. It's beneath our feet in the water. It's coming out of the closet. It's coming out of the basement. We live with the reality of death, and hopefully that makes us want to live a little harder.